Hey, White Sox fans, Birmingham Barons fans, minor league baseball fans, Chicago White Sox affiliate fans. My name is Brett Ballantini. I'm lucky enough to be hosting another edition of Sox Pop on the Farm. It's our farm podcast. This is number 58. We're back with the Birmingham Barons. Oh, it's the most fun team to talk about because this is a devastatingly good ball club in the White Sox organization. Although those Kannapolis Cannonballers, they're giving the Barons a little bit of a run. Lucky enough to be talking with President, GM, man about town with the Birmingham Barons, Jonathan Nelson. Thanks, Jonathan. I know things are very busy these days. I appreciate you taking a few minutes out to talk Barons.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it. It's always fun to visit with you, and obviously this is a special and unique time of the year. So it's fun to say the very least. Yet at the same time, it's we're sort of like that toy growing up, Stretch Armstrong, just pulling a lot of different directions, and one way or another we'll get back together in one piece. But still, nonetheless, it's a fun time.
Finally, we got a Stretch Armstrong reference in the podcast. Okay, I've been waiting. Yes, this is, I'm not sure about wardrobe changes, but this is a special. We got a little back-to-back going, although you will only see one of these this week. You'll see another special edition with Jonathan Nelson next week, devoted to Rickwood Field and the Negro League's history and the Barons playing there. But we're going to get to that in another podcast. Hang tight with us. But for now, we're going to talk about the first place on the verge, terrific, outstanding, really, Birmingham Barons. At the moment, heading into play when we are recording here on Wednesday, Barons 37-21, 3 games up in their division, plus 81 run differential, best in the Southern League. That's 20 runs better than any other team in the Southern League. That's significant dominance. Although, as we chatted just briefly before recording, Jonathan, very stiff challenge from Pensacola. Gave you a tiny bit of what for, it seems like maybe a few weeks ago, and now even here in Birmingham presenting a tough challenge. Southern League is no pushovers. Barons have been playing well, but there's not many easy dates you have.
No. Last week was obviously critical when we went up to Tennessee and Sevierville and played the Cubs AA affiliate. By national accounts, they believe that's a really good team and good for them. And but at the same time, winning 4 of 6 at their place was really good for us going down the stretch. Brett, obviously, like you mentioned, this is not an easy matchup. Mm-hmm. And then next week, when we turn the page in the final week of the first half. It's not an easy matchup with Montgomery either, with the Rays AA affiliate. So, when it comes to, you look down at the schedule, and those jockeying to clinch a first half divisional title between us and Tennessee, I know that Tennessee has a much easier schedule playing Biloxi and I believe Mississippi as well. So for us to play Pensacola and then Montgomery, 2 teams vying to win their division in the first half, and 2 quality teams, tougher for us, yet at the same time feel comfortable, confident with our club, and just look forward to hopefully a post-game, clubhouse celebration in due time.
Yeah, it's been too many seasons between those types of celebrations, and that doesn't just speak to Birmingham, that just speaks to everyone in the system. Great Falls Voyagers, last playoff team I can remember covering for our minor league updates. So, yeah, it seems like we've got some brighter days ahead, whether they come in just a mere matter of days and games or not. We're not going to really get into that at all. Let's just grind out a few more wins and get you in the playoffs, Jonathan. One thing we haven't discussed, we've maybe barely touched on, so I wanted to lead off talking about, and funny that we wouldn't, given that the manager of the Birmingham Barons was a major league reliever himself, is every aspect of this team is pretty lights out, but the bullpen has been just as good as any other aspect. Sorry, rotation, because you've been absolutely killer on any level. But the bullpen, Yosimar Cousin, I'm going to try and do this, Anthony Tuina Nitoa, who is, an import, didn't even start the season in Birmingham. Addison Coffey as well, although somewhat of a rising late end arm in the system, has joined Birmingham. Eric Adler did not start the season with the team, sitting in as at least part-time, if not full-time, closer. This is, I mean, to whatever degree, a pretty lights out bullpen. It's got to be something that pleases you a lot. And I imagine, of course, John Eli, is the guy responsible there. But it doesn't probably help. It doesn't hurt to have your manager being a guy who's done it in the major leagues as well. The bullpen's really clicking.
No, yeah, I mean the pitching staff and, like you said, the bullpen. Obviously from beginning to end, has been clicking and doing a great job, and obviously reflected in the way we've performed all season long. And like you said, the extra feather in the cap is that you have another experienced voice when it comes to the coaching ranks, with Sergio being that major league reliever during his playing days. So, and obviously, but John had his experience at the big league level as well. So feel pretty good, and still feel, despite the fact that, earlier this week we Drew Thorpe and the most appropriate recognition, got the call up and had a really quality performance against the Seattle Mariners. That we, are going to continue to hold form, and despite the fact, it's just the name of the game. I mean, for winning at the minor league level, there's I don't want to say penalties, but that's just part of the game. So we want our guys, obviously, to continue to excel and grow, and to reach ultimately the south side of Chicago, and whether it be the next step being Charlotte or Chicago. But yeah, this bullpen, last time we've seen a bullpen like this was really 2013, where there was just really not only all hands on deck, but you had Cody Winarski when we won the Southern League Championship back then, and he was lights out. Now, obviously, as he progressed with his career, I think injuries ultimately derailed his career, but at the same time, very excited about what we have here, and hopefully, I don't want to, certainly bend the arm of Paul or Chris Getz about how long these guys are going to stay here, but hopefully we're going to keep them as long as we possibly can.
At least let's clinch the playoffs, and all right, let's make some moves.
Usually that's what occurs.
Yeah, the
dismantling occurs the day after.
It's like, okay, we're in the playoffs, but okay, who are we going to have to run out in the playoffs? All right, well, let's jump into the fact that there have been a couple matriculations, and Drew Thorpe, as you referred, not only pitched in a stellar manner for Birmingham, but then went up to Seattle for the White Sox and pitched really about as good as you could expect. And really that's happened with three guys who've made their starting debut with the White Sox this year, because you can throw Jonathan Cannon as well as Nick Nastrini into that mix. Drew Thorpe came to you in the offseason trade, already the minor league pitcher of the year. So he'd established something at lower level pitching. And with Birmingham, when you look at what he did, I mean, you've seen it live with your own eyes every game, and you just look at the stat line, you really absolutely could not ask for a pitcher to do anything more than he did. It almost a miracle that he was on seemingly every game. Just a guy who if there was a player to jump from AA or any level straight to the majors, it really seems like Drew Thorpe 2024.
Yeah, I mean, and clearly, I mean, between he and Iriarte, two of the big pieces of that San Diego Padres deal. I mean, when it came to Drew Thorpe, obviously a very efficient, effective pitcher. And as I mentioned in the past, it was sort of like when we had Mark Burley here back in 2000. I mean, you knew that you were going to get a crisp, clean game every time out, and you were probably rolling the dice when it came to the time of the game. It was going to be 2 hours or 2 hours and with change. So you knew you were going to get a quality start every time, but thrilled for him, thrilled for the White Sox, because I know that with this season and with so many hand wringing and just frustrations when it comes to a variety of different things, being a White Sox fan, I know that the glimpses of hope for the future and seeing a pitcher of the caliber of Drew Thorpe, especially with his debut against Seattle, gives everybody, again, sort of those needed, just sort of just pockets of just optimism that we all, look forward to seeing that all these players continue to progress and ultimately get to Chicago. Mm-hmm.
Drew is a fascinating study in that he goes a little bit against the trend, which is just max effort, power arm. And, fortunately, that also has come with what seems like an uptick in injury. And even when the trade was made, Jairo Iriarte was the guy who seemed to have a little more hype. He had obviously the bigger arm, the more traditional fastball in 2024 baseball. He's a guy that even Chris Gepp sort of hyped as, hey, it's likely we will see him in Chicago by the end of the year. Does it speak a little bit to the, just the trends of how pitching tends to go? Because, you're name checking Mark Burley. Who knows? You might even throw, this is ridiculous to do so. There's a caveat right here. But in terms of the speed changing, you've got Greg Maddux, which not necessarily Greg Maddux came up with a powerful fastball, certainly settled into something much different than that. The fact that Drew has this devastating changeup, it speaks to the fact that there is something to pitching and just the change of speed while giving the same look that can be far more devastating than just blowing a guy away. Hey, we'd all like to have a 100-mile-an-hour arm for sure, but there's something to pitching. At some point, you're maybe not going to be able to throw 100 miles an hour anymore. If you've learned to pitch and mix your speeds the way that Drew Thorpe mesmerized to some degree, even the Seattle Mariners, in his debut, it really speaks to knowing how to pitch. And, I don't want to say Drew Thorpe's a throwback, but he's pitched his way into the major leagues.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, you see the common philosophy all across Major League Baseball is that strength, speed, all those things. And that certainly, has been the way of the world when it comes to this system for a number of years. Yet at the same time, what you're saying is a pitcher who has the really artistry of being able to pitch, not just relying on strength and power, but really just effective movement and location, and hopefully that's and also that goes in line with certainly a much debated topic earlier this season too, is that you have all these pitchers that with strength and power and all those things, really putting themselves vulnerable to injury, and hopefully when you have a player like that, obviously when it came to Greg Maddux, not to reference a Cub. Obviously, we'll reference him more as a San Diego Padre.
Sure, yes, come on.
Yet at the same time, obviously the injuries that he experienced during his career were very minimal. Yeah. So hopefully that'll translate to Drew Thorpe and obviously the others that we have as well.
Yeah, before we hop to break, Jonathan, we have to acknowledge yet another jump straight from Birmingham to the major leagues. And this one, is sort of a familial thing for you. It's got to be, as much as seeing any of your players matriculate into the major leagues, even not with the White Sox, but certainly on the South Side, it had to be extra special to learn that Duke Ellis got the call, has got his feet wet in the major leagues. Can you take us back week or so in you getting the news, how the news was conveyed to him, and just the excitement you felt of seeing a guy who really is sort of a second-generation player for you make the major leagues?
Yeah, admittedly, I was not part of the conversation when he was informed of being able to be promoted to Chicago. Yet at the same time, beyond, we've talked about Duke so many times, and that he is, he is such an electrifying player. And while there is going to be an expectation of some turbulence when you get to the big league level and a learning curve, at the same time, when he settles in, he has the potential to be quite an electrifying leadoff hitter, defender, and somebody whom I think White Sox fans would be just thrilled to see. It's been a long time since, White Sox fans have seen that type of leadoff hitter with that kind of really base knowledge, awareness, and overall ability, such as Scott Pasetnik, or I'll even go back even further and say John Cangelosi when he came up. It was one of those ones where when they were swiping bags and leading off, is that they were setting a different tempo, a different kind of stress on the pitcher, which obviously complicated things and led to some positive things for the White Sox in long term. But ultimately with Duke, thrilled for him, thrilled for his family. And, I'm hopeful that, this, while we always want to keep the great players down here and to help us obviously, capture another ring and do all that, ultimately the big prize is getting a ring and helping the White Sox and helping them fulfill their careers, and ultimately, having an all-star career and just all the great things that brings with it.
And what's remarkable with Duke, and certainly health plays such a big role, leg health, full health. Don't want to, we're, as long as we're throwing crazy, Hall of Fame comps out there, I'll throw out Tim Raines as a base stealer because of the efficiency. And we are going to talk about this after the break as well, but there's extraordinary efficiency. And that's for all the bumps that Duke encountered in his first few games of the White Sox. The first thing he did was basically get on base, and take second like it's nothing, and it's not nothing. But I mean, that is a weapon that is easy to overlook. But boy, don't look past that, because that's turning walks into doubles or singles into doubles. You can't overlook the weapon that he has. And that's what he showed in Birmingham, and he brought it up to the major leagues immediately.
Yeah. I mean, he's like I said, I'm one of those. I buy into I'm an old school person when it comes to small ball and stealing bases and quality leadoff hitters at the top of the lineup, and doing all those little things that Isaac Ian used to talk about. And so he has all those characteristics of being that type of special player. I'm hopeful that that once he sort of gets past all that learning curve, that he'll be able to settle in, and then his career will take off, and again start to really fit in with the White Sox and the future that holds.
We're going to take a quick break. Jonathan's going to be back with me to talk just a little bit more Birmingham Barons baseball and sort of what becomes our monthly update. And it's been such a consistent, fun one, because Birmingham has been pretty much got out of the gate nice and hot, and had remained hot. And, we're going to see it all the way through to some playoff triumphs. No jinxes there. We're just confident. We know it can happen. We're going to take a break. Hang with us here in 1 minute, and we'll be back to talk more Barons baseball. Hey, White Sox fans and Birmingham Barons super fans. I'm lucky enough to be speaking with GM, President, Man About Town in Birmingham, Jonathan Nelson. I am Brett Ballantini, hosting this podcast. Let's finish up a little bit of the very little offensive talk we're going to get to with Birmingham, because we're focused really on a lot of pitching this time around and call-ups. And that is beyond Duke Ellis and his like mind-boggling efficiency. The team itself is stealing bases at an extremely good clip, and no matter how anti old school you are, and stolen bases aren't worth the effort, you have to have a certain efficiency to make it worthwhile, which I buy into. Well, the Birmingham Barons are doing it. 85.8 stolen base success rate, and granted, we're going to lump a lot of that on the back of Duke Ellis, but it's not just Duke Ellis. This has been a very impressive attacking offense, not just in the batter's box, but once these guys are on the bases as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, whether it be Brooks Baldwin, Jacob Gonzalez, obviously Terrell Tatum continues to settle in and have a great season playing outfield. I mean, it's a very impressive lineup from beginning to end. It's a great balance too. Not only do you have the speed, but you have the power with Veras and Tim Elko. Even though Tim's power numbers are probably not where he would want them to be, yet at the same time, I think in recent weeks you've seen his average really climb and really him continue to settle into the season itself. Yeah. So overall, and again, this is one where while we're on the brink of winning the first half divisional title, I think that it's very exciting to see these guys continue to excel. I mean, Brooks Baldwin, obviously, as we've talked about multiple times. I mean, the kid, and when Gonzalez was moved here, he's been sort of fluctuating between shortstop and third base, and to have a number of middle infielders that can be so versatile to play second, short, third base. You can never have enough of those, especially the ones that really hit for average, not necessarily for the power, but obviously the power is always going to be icing on the cake, but to hit for average and to get on base, and to set the table for the rest of the lineup is something very exciting about. And there's always going to be surprises in every year with each team, yet at the same time Brooks Baldwin certainly is the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to that this year.
Yeah, and it's been great that right off the bat, I want to say one of his first few games, Jacob Gonzalez had slid over to second. It does seem like those guys are flipping around. Jason Matthews was to whatever degree an incumbent in the middle infield and at third base. He's been mixing around as well. So the guys, particularly with the amazing glut of talent there in the middle infield, seem flexible enough and really maybe not necessarily little to no defensive loss in switching over at positions. Maybe, they may have come to spring training not particularly, geared toward as their main deal, knowing that they would have to, shift over at least a second base and be middle infielder. Doesn't seem like there's been much lost there. And that just bodes well, because at some point, especially with Colson in Charlotte, at some point, somebody's going to have to, move around a little bit. So, might as well get ready at Double-A and be flexible enough to play a good second base or even third on those days that somebody else is at short.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, you have, Sosa, who did
Oh,
great when he was
yeah,
here just a few years ago, and
yeah,
he's settling in really well this right now in his current, situation with the White Sox. And then, of course, you looming, in a few weeks, you have the Major League Baseball draft. So once again, we
yeah,
reset everything, and with the
yeah,
White Sox picking fifth, you never know the direction. And
yeah,
but obviously, this year it seems like between college specifically and some high school kids is that there's an abundance of quality players in the draft, especially in the top five.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's not a bad position to be in. Everybody always wants to hope to win the lottery and get number one, but you can deal with number five. All right, let's hop back to pitchers. It's been the name of the game. Just want to, as we're name checking left and right, Drew Thorpe and comping him like crazy. Sorry, Drew, don't listen. Really, you got to be honest, and we've talked about these guys. Mason Adams, Kai Bush from the right side, from the left side, really have put up stats nearly mirroring Drew Thorpe. Now, I don't think Drew has had what you can even call a bad game, and that may have been the case maybe once with those two guys. But I mean, you're talking about a core three, now just two, that have really been lights out now for, we're going 2 months at this point. That's a pretty amazing gift. These guys might have all been ready, but there's something about how everything is coalesced in Birmingham with the coaching staff, with John Eli and maybe Sergio up top as well. It's just really clicked for these guys. And you'd almost expect that. I mean, you can't say nothing be lost losing Drew Thorpe to the major leagues, but this team is sort of set up to, maybe to brush that off as best as any team could.
Yeah, there's something to not being one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball, much less within your own organization, and not having to live up to those
Yeah.
expectations, and to be a third or fourth day starter on a staff.
Yeah.
And so, there's really been no sort of, let go of any kind of pressure, and they've just continued to step up. And they're a major reason why that we are in where we are right now when it comes to position, when it comes to a postseason berth. When you have, obviously you expect a 1 and 2 to deliver, each time out, yet at the same time, when you have 3 and 4 and now 5, continuing to sort of, to step up, deliver an A+ performance, you obviously have a great ball club, and it's certainly reflected in the standings and overall performance of the season thus far.
Yeah. All right. We have buried the lead on this entire podcast. We're 20 minutes or so in. And I don't know, Jonathan, it's sort of nice when you lose a stud like Drew Thorpe right to the major leagues, but then you look down the bench and say, oh, hey, there's Noah Schultz. How's that experience been, just bringing in what is, heralded, now as perhaps outright the top prospect in the system, certainly been the top pitcher in the system, although, again, that's a competitive field there. Bringing that guy in, to pitch to whatever degree, he's been highly, highly protected at every step along the way and still hasn't seen a 5-inning outing at the pro level. But that's not a bad situation to be able to turn and say, okay, hey, grab your glove, Noah, you're in. That's going to help you not miss a beat with that pitching rotation.
No, and with Noah, I know that we've seen him once since he's been called up to AA, and he had a great performance that Saturday night that he pitched with his last homestand, and looked very comfortable. So many times you see the transition from A ball to AA, and there's a lot of nervous Nellies in him.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he seems to be, making the transition seamlessly. And, hopefully, when you lose somebody and you gain somebody with similar talent, if not, a higher ceiling, there's reason to be optimistic and excited. And I would think that, with his development, meaning Noah's, that ultimately that he's not a threat to be called up anytime soon, is that this is part of the natural progression of where he is with his development. And so I'm excited. I would have to imagine, while there's no guarantees, and who knows, maybe he gets a cup of coffee in Charlotte, but I would imagine that for the most part he's looking to call Birmingham home for the next few months, at least to mid to late September.
Mm-hmm. And no trade secrets here, but I mean, I assume at some point the challenge will be to stretch him out to at least qualify for a first victory. I know he just hasn't done that. I know he's been a pretty strict pitch limit, and I imagine it will happen at some point in Birmingham. I know there isn't probably a plan necessarily next start, but clearly, given that he's taken on all challenges, I mean, he's had starts where he's basically not let a ball out of the infield. One of the big challenges left for him is to develop the endurance and the stamina to, finally get to that sort of win qualifying start. And I imagine that is going to happen at some point sooner or later in Birmingham.
Yeah, I would have to imagine. I mean, obviously, as we continue to progress with the season, that's obviously a very common thing, is that obviously that continue to build up the endurance and overall confidence and comfort level when it comes to this level.
All right, there's a countdown to finally seeing some, whatever it is, I guess late September or whatever it is, baseball in Birmingham. It's there. It's happening. We're going to try to just keep counting down the clock here, but it's been an extremely successful season so far. I've been very happy to be able to check in every few weeks with Jonathan Nelson in Birmingham. Thanks once again. I guess we'll be talking next on the other side of you can hold up your champagne soaked polo or whatever it is, but that's what we'll do there. But here's the good news: bonus Jonathan Nelson content. Oh, we're squeezing at least one in. Who knows? Maybe I'll bug him if something clinches too. But we do have bonus Jonathan Nelson content that's going to run in conjunction with the Rickwood Field game and games. So tune in on that in another week's time. But for now, Jonathan, thanks for catching us up once again on the Birmingham Barons.
Thanks, Brett. Enjoyed it as always.